I went into Europa Universalis V expecting the same rhythm as always. Paint the map, stack modifiers, chase mission trees, and tell myself I'm learning history while I min-max a spreadsheet. But that's not what I found. EU5 is not just EU4 with cleaner tooltips. It's a different machine entirely. It tries to model 5 centuries not only through borders and flags, but through living people, their cultures, faiths, jobs, and ambitions shifting across a breathing world. It's breathtaking and it's messy, sometimes at the same time. If EU4 was a brilliant historical board game, EU5 wants to be a full-blown societal simulator. And most of the time, it actually succeeds. The biggest evolution is the population system. In EU4, a province had one culture and one religion. In EU5, every location holds real populations with individual culture, class, literacy, and faith. They migrate, they change jobs, they react dynamically to markets and policies. You no longer spend monarch points to make abstract progress. You shape incentives and watch society bend. It feels more like Victoria III's societal simulation fused with EU's grand strategic scale. The result is slower, but deeper. It forces you to think in systems, not in cliques. Expanding a market town into a city is not about just income anymore. It changes labor distribution, it angers estates, it reshapes your country's societal hierarchy. Adjust your minting for a quick cash boost, and inflation punishes you later. You don't build for bonuses, you build knowing that your decisions ripple across a population that remembers. Terrain and logistics also play a much larger role. Where EU4 simplified everything into a terrain tag, EU5 breaks the world into topography, climate, vegetation, and infrastructure. Armies fight differently in humid lowlands than in cold plateaus. Supply lines matter, and the new control mechanic makes sure that you can't truly govern a territory just because it's painted your color. It's a bit Hearts of Iron in its back-end realism, but the front-end gameplay still feels like Europa. Strategic maneuvering, sieges, and smart positioning win wars. Battle presentation has improved. Flanks and formations matter. Smoke thickens as gunpowder tech advances, and unit visuals evolve with professionalism and culture. It's still a paradox game, but for once, the battles look like something you would want to zoom in on. If you're coming from Crusader Kings III, you'll notice that EU5 sits halfway between state simulation and character drama. You still play as the nation's guiding will, managing laws, diplomacy, and budgets, but 3D rulers, dynasties, and unions add a personal touch. Royal marriages can create parliamentary unions or entire dynastic blocks that shift the political balance. It's not CK3 level storytelling, but it does give rulership texture. I'd like more to do with these characters, more political acts, faster integration paths, more dynamic diplomacy, but they still make the state feel less faceless. You're not just managing ledgers, you are managing egos. Economically, EU5's market system is the star. Each region acts as a self-contained economy, and your production methods, resources, and labor force determine its health. You cannot spam buildings anymore. Every decision affects the supply chain. Cut timber production and shipbuilding collapses. Oversaturate the cloth market and merchants will move somewhere else. Early on, the automation tools can handle production and trade so that you can focus on the big picture. Later, when you understand the flows, taking direct control over key industries feels incredibly rewarding. The economy pushes back. Success is not guaranteed, and every surplus or shortage feels earned. That's EU5 at its best, when even peacetime feels alive. You can easily lose a century to building roads, managing estates, and optimizing trade routes without fighting a single war. Governance itself becomes the game. It's not just preparation for war. On the other hand, the AI and balance, however, do need work. Maps tend to stagnate too quickly after 1500, defensive alliances freeze borders, and colonization sometimes happens in bizarre patterns. Like you'll see Italy in the Congo or Bohemia in Newfoundland. Major powers occasionally underperform, while random minors overachieve. It's rarely game-breaking, but it is often immersion-breaking. I don't need strict historical outcomes, but I do need believable ones. And EU5 sometimes crosses that line from plausible to absurd. And because of that, it's a world that functions, but doesn't always feel authentic. And Paradox will likely balance this out over time, but for now it's noticeable. Situations are a step forward, but not far enough, I feel. EU5 replaces mission trees with situations. Global historical events like the 100 Years' War or the Reformation, and they sound ambitious, but most are still a bit too passive. You often end up watching them unfold rather than influencing them through policy or intrigue. The concept is really cool, using history as a dynamic framework rather than a checklist, but it needs more interactivity and player agency. EU4's missions gave structure and direction. EU5's situations trade that clarity for freedom, but they risk feeling hollow. A hybrid system, something like Victoria III's journal entries, could have provided the best of both worlds, in my opinion. Now, for a game this complex, onboarding is surprisingly strong. The tutorial gets you moving, and Paradox's nested tooltips remain one of the best ideas in strategy UI. Automation helps prevent paralysis. But make no mistake, this is still a Paradox grand strategy game. You'll spend at least an hour just feeling comfortable enough to unpause, and another dozen before you understand what you're really doing. And that's not a bug, that's part of the experience. EU5 does not chase accessibility. It knows exactly who it's for. The players who love learning through failure. If Victoria III's menus overwhelmed you, then this will too. But when you finally understand how it all fits together, it's intoxicating. Performance is better than expected for a CPU-heavy sim tracking millions of entities. Tick speed slows a little during major wars, but it never grinds to a halt, and even late in a campaign, the interface stays responsive, and the flat paper map view both looks beautiful and runs very smoothly. I encountered occasional crashes. One campaign ran flawlessly for 500 years, another had a half a dozen crashes in the same span, but nothing catastrophic. Compared to Victoria III's late-game lag or Hearts of Iron 4's endgame crawl, EU5 feels well optimized. Paradox has promised long-term support, and early patches have already been improving on stability. In terms of combat, it sticks to the series' roots, but it also evolves in the right ways. Tile-based movement, sieges, and attrition remain, but supply lines, flanking, and unit diversity add flavor. Armies transition from levies to professionals, navies matter again for trade, blockades, and proximity control, and the visual presentation of it all, like smoke, uniforms, and real-time formations, finally gives these battles some weight. It's not Total War cinematic, but it's the best combat presentation Paradox has achieved thus far. Graphically, it's mixed. Crusader Kings III and Victoria III are still prettier, with cleaner lighting and smoother terrain. EU5's 3D world can look a tad soft, and the coastlines are rough, but the new city sprawl and unit animations sell the scale. The flat map mode is gorgeous. Parchment textures, crisp borders, and satisfying colors. I spent most of the campaign on that map alone. It perfectly fits the fantasy of running a state from a candlelit war table. Okay, so where does EU5 stand among its siblings? If EU4 was a game of clever rules and CK3 a game of personalities, EU5 is a game of systems. It borrows Imperator's ambition, Victoria's economy, and CK's dynastic flavor, but it still forges its own identity. Monarch points are gone. Progress now comes from people, resources, and decisions that ripple outward. And that shift from abstraction to simulation changes a lot. You no longer press buttons for bonuses. You build the conditions for progress. It's slower, it's heavier, and sometimes it's frustrating, but when it works, it's far more immersive than what EU5 offered. Two other issues linger: estate unrest and alliance stagnation. Some nations collapse under endless revolts, while others form permanent defensive coalitions that choke global movement. Patches have started fixing this, but it's still a visible flaw. These are balanced dials that Paradox will likely tune over the next few months. It's the kind of growing pains every Paradox launch usually has. But still, what impresses me is how much of it already works. Markets clear, people move, laws reshape behavior. You can play as Switzerland and thrive in isolation, or as Portugal and build a maritime empire. EU5 rewards experimentation, and no two campaigns unfold the same way. When the game sings, it's because your story grows organically from the simulation, and it's not from scripted outcomes. Europa Universalis V is Paradox's boldest design since Crusader Kings II, and its riskiest since Imperator Rome. It's half genius, half chaos. The foundation, population, markets, and warfare is outstanding. The launch version is uneven, with AI, balance, and situations mechanics still undercooked, but the structure underneath is solid. If Paradox can stabilize the AI and deepen the event systems, EU5 could easily become the defining grand strategy of the decade. For now, it's a fascinating sandbox for veterans who love complexity and who don't mind a few rough edges. Final score, 8 out of 10. Main pros: revolutionary population and market simulation, deep emergent domestic management, engaging warfare and logistics systems, beautiful paper map and strong performance, and immense potential for patches and mods. Cons include AI quirks and uneven global balance, static mid-game and odd colonization paths, situations lack depth and agency, occasional crashes and minor bugs, and steep learning curve and minimal onboarding. So, should you buy it? If you're new to Paradox games, probably not yet. The learning curve is brutal, the balance is a bit off, and the AI does still make baffling choices. You will probably have a better experience 6 months from now, once a few major patches hit. But if you're already deep into Crusader Kings, Victoria, or Europa Universalis IV, and you crave a denser, slower, more systemic world, EU5 is worth it even in its launch state. It's demanding, it's brilliant in parts, and it's occasionally broken, but it's unmistakably ambitious. So, in short, wait if you're casual, dive in if you're devoted.